The door clicked shut with a sound sharper than it should have been, a small metal finality echoing louder than any argument, and in that silence I felt the difference between being locked out and walking freely into an open horizon. Keys should have symbolized choice, yet in their hand they stood for restriction, each one carrying access. I was denied, papers withheld, accounts hidden, a mailbox I couldn't open. That quiet refusal was not shouting, not slamming, but the deliberate keeping of what belonged to both of us, and in that moment of absence, I realized another door, unseen but vital, was beginning to open. By morning, the house was still, yet the quiet pressed in like a cage, and though I wanted to rattle the locked drawers until the withheld papers fell into my hands, I chose to sit and let the anger burn down, to steal calm. In that pause, I saw them clearly, not as a villain, but as someone terrified of losing control, their grip on keys and documents rooted more in fear than malice. That recognition didn't excuse the harm, but it explained the click of the door, and in the same moment I drew a line. This would not be about revenge, which is loud and fleeting, but about resolution, which is quiet and lasting. Still, I knew 7 hidden chains bound me, unnamed but certain, waiting in the silence for the keys that would one day release them. The evidence surfaced in fragments. An old $147 receipt for a dinner I never attended, dismissive texts archived in my phone, bank accounts simplified into one name that wasn't mine, each small allowance becoming another link in a chain I hadn't noticed forming. Then, I mistook compliance for peace, but now I see that freedom is not harmony, it is access. The 6-month waiting period required for filings was a reminder of how long chains can linger. Yet in those months, I began to see each withheld key clearly, the missing fob, the just-in-case spare, the digital login I was locked out of. What once symbolized exclusion now pointed toward the future. Each key reclaimed a quiet unlocking. The papers on my desk no longer felt like losses, but like the beginnings of an inventory, and I listed 7 chains, not abstractions but specific levers of control: finances, hidden agreements, withheld access, subtle dependencies. Naming them stripped their disguise and turned them into tasks. So I built a spreadsheet with columns for documents, accounts, and timelines, marking gaps and noting which agencies I'd need to face. Order replaced disorder, clarity replaced chaos, and I asked myself, and now I ask you, as you hear these 7, which chain holds your freedom hostage? That naming was my turning point. The plan stopped being a wish and became a written fact, mine alone. One call to the bank led to 30 days of statements, revealing transfers disguised under vague labels, followed by a quiet meeting with an attorney above a coffee shop where $250 bought the consultation and $3,000 secured the retainer, each page reviewed until one unauthorized deed made her pen stop. From there, I collected receipts, screenshots, emails, photos of the locked drawer, and each artifact became another key returned to my hand. I reset passwords, opened accounts in my name, filed paperwork with 30-day notice periods, and though the steps were tedious and unglamorous, they were relentless. Silence replacing confrontation, evidence replacing assumption, until I could feel each lock give way beneath steady precision. When I slid the envelope across the table, its quiet weight was louder than their rushed excuses, because inside lay reconciled accounts, reversal orders, and the deed stamped with both our names, proof signed not by me alone, but by clerks, bankers, and attorneys whose signatures carried more authority than any raised voice. I let them read page by page as their hands trembled, watching fear bleed through bluster, because control had been their anchor, and without it, desperation surfaced. For a moment, I saw their humanity, their terror of irrelevance. But pity did not alter the outcome. The first chain was broken, the first key reclaimed, and though I said nothing, the silence between us promised 6 more would fall. The counter-strikes arrived in thin-stamped envelopes, legal objections, rumors seeded in whispers, late-night texts designed to unsettle, but where they chose noise, I chose order, logging every document, screenshotting each word, dating and filing until my records grew thicker than their stories. The costs were real. A $3,500 retainer drained my savings, hearings dragged on for weeks, a misplaced clerk form sent me across town twice in one afternoon, frictions that slowed progress but could not reverse it. They showed up unannounced, tried to bait me into conflict, but instead of reacting, I archived, preserving each action like receipts folded flat. Escalation was not fire but smoke, and in the haze it became clear their resources, their calm, their credibility were burning faster than mine. The room sharpened with their raised voice, accusations stacked on accusations, but I answered with stillness and placed the folder on the table, each page naming a chain: financial blocks, hidden transfers, withheld keys, digital locks, rumors, silenced words, 7 in total, each backed by timestamps and signatures. They scrambled for explanations, but the document spoke louder, and when I finally spoke, my words were measured. This ends here. Sliding the notarized separation confirmation across, stamped and final, I watched their hand hesitate before pulling back. The chains were not returned but dismantled, the boundary drawn in ink, and when I left the silence intact behind me, I carried the keys in my pocket, free from any door they could close. My new apartment smelled of fresh paint, light falling through wide windows onto floors. I chose, each key in my pocket belonging only to me. No spares withheld, no locks off limits. I signed my lease, opened accounts, paid bills without hidden transfers, and even the small acts, ordering a desk, hanging curtains, choosing colors, became declarations of ownership. The noise of their rumors faded to nothing, replaced by the steady rhythm of days I directed, and I understood that freedom isn't dramatic, but found in the absence of interference, in the quiet of doors opening at my touch. And I'll ask you, which chain are you ready to drop? Because the moment you name it, you've already taken hold of your first key. At the window, the evening air carried the faint scent of rain, and the horizon stretched wide, with no locks clicking shut, no walls pressing in, only the contrast between a past bound by permission and a present defined by choice. The keys I now held were not burdens but symbols, each one a reminder that I could step through doors on my own terms. One old key I kept on my desk, not for them, but for myself, to remember who I was and who I refused to be again. Freedom was not loud or fiery, but steady, woven into the way I signed my name, the way silence expanded instead of caged. The future would be built brick by brick, document by document, choice by choice. And if anyone asked who I am now, I would answer simply, I don't need revenge. I own my freedom.